It was a beautiful day in a peaceful village in the heart of Delta. The air was fresh and filled with laughter as Brian and Lisa's traditional wedding ceremony unfolded. The villagers gathered in large numbers, each dressed in vibrant and colorful attire that shone under the midday sun. Lisa appeared, captivating everyone with her graceful beauty. Her wedding dress hugged her waist gently, highlighting her smooth skin, which glowed in the sunlight. Each of her steps seemed calculated, full of elegance and charm, drawing all eyes upon her. In her hands, she held a traditional wooden cup filled with palm wine. According to custom, Lisa was to find Brian among the crowd and offer him the wine as a symbol of love and respect. With a smile hinting at mystery, she took careful steps toward him. When their eyes met, Brian's heart beat faster. He stood silently as Lisa approached, each of her steps matching the cheers of the villagers around them. Finally, Lisa knelt before Brian, presenting him with the cup of wine. Dressed in a refined blue outfit, Brian took it and drank deeply. The air erupted with applause and joyous cheers from everyone around. That night, Brian and Lisa would spend their first night together as husband and wife, marking the beginning of their shared journey. After their meaningful wedding, Brian and Lisa embarked on their married life filled with warmth and joy. They shared sweet moments and built their home together. Brian loved Lisa wholeheartedly and was willing to do anything to support her. Early in their marriage, when Lisa expressed her desire to return to school to pursue a degree in finance, Brian readily agreed. His business was flourishing at the time, allowing him to support Lisa easily. Throughout Lisa's time in college, Brian covered all her tuition fees, feeling proud of her accomplishments. Meanwhile, Brian's business also thrived. He quickly became the leading wine supplier to the renowned restaurants and hotels in Asaba, with his trucks constantly busy delivering quality wine to the most reputable places in the region. Their life seemed perfect. However, one important thing was still missing from their happiness. During the first 5 years of their marriage, they struggled to have children. They tried everything, fasting, praying, and consulting numerous doctors, but nothing seemed to work. Nevertheless, Lisa remained optimistic, often comforting Brian by saying that everything was part of God's plan and that one day, they would be blessed. Finally, after 5 long years of waiting, their prayers were answered. Lisa gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, Patrick and Patricia, bringing boundless joy to their family. Life seemed as if it could not be any better. Brian felt incredibly fortunate to live with his wonderful wife and their 2 beloved children. In the years that followed, Brian and Lisa's small family enjoyed much happiness. Patrick and Patricia grew up healthy, and both began their college journeys. Lisa, thanks to Brian's support, completed her university degree and quickly advanced in her career. She secured a high-paying position at a bank in Asaba, which made their lives even more comfortable. With absolute love and trust in Lisa, Brian entrusted her with most of the family's finances, always considering her as his steadfast support. However, as time went on, challenges began to arise. Brian's business gradually faced difficulties. Contracts dwindled, and cash flow became tight. Despite his best efforts, every loan he applied for was denied, even from the bank where Lisa worked. Things became even more challenging when Brian took on a large project, building a shopping center in downtown Asaba. For him, it was an opportunity to revive his business and open a new chapter in his career. But with the project only halfway completed, his finances were exhausted. The rainy season was approaching, and Brian needed money to finish the roofing. One evening, as he sat alone at the dining table, weighed down with worry, Lisa approached him with her wallet in hand. She offered him part of her salary, gently saying, "Use this money to keep the business going. What matters most is that your business survives." Brian looked at the stack of cash in Lisa's hand, feeling deeply moved. He hesitated, but Lisa insisted. "We're a family, Brian. Your work is our future." Eventually, Brian accepted the money, though he silently vowed never to take money from Lisa again. He felt both grateful and somewhat disappointed in himself for letting things reach this point. Little did he know, however, that this was only the beginning of a strange series of events that would soon upend his life. That year, the rainy season arrived earlier than usual. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, casting a gloomy shadow over Brian's unfinished project. The site, once alive with the sounds of machinery and the chatter of workers, now stood silent, a somber picture of abandonment. Brian stood still in the rain, looking up at the skeletal structure of the shopping center he had dreamed of. His heart felt heavy, much like the rain soaking through him. Amid the howling wind and the empty space, Brian's mind drifted back to memories of his prosperous, successful days. He once had it all: wealth, ambition, and grand dreams. But now, he was left with mounting debt and shattered hopes. Helplessness filled his heart as he wondered why everything had taken such a downturn. Lately, Brian noticed that Lisa was not the same as before. Her gentle smile seemed to have faded, and her voice during late-night conversations now sounded weary and subdued. Something was amiss between them, leaving Brian with a nagging unease. Especially troubling was the rejection of his loan application at the bank where Lisa worked. Brian couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he didn't fully understand. One evening, when Lisa returned home looking exhausted, she dropped her bag on the table and sighed. Brian, trying to keep his tone gentle, asked, "How was work today?" Lisa offered a faint smile, her gaze avoiding his as she replied, "Busy. There's so much to handle at the bank." Brian took her hand, offering comfort. "I know you've been trying your best. We'll get through this together, we just need to give it a little more time." Lisa nodded slightly, but still avoided his eyes. Night after night, thoughts and suspicions plagued him, leaving him unable to sleep. A few days later, when Brian visited his construction site, he was stunned to see an unbelievable sight. Not far from his project, on an empty plot that once lay barren, a new shopping center was rising at an astonishing pace. The structure was grander and far more impressive than his, with construction moving along at a remarkable speed. Brian felt his heart pound, his mind spinning with questions: who's behind this project? And why build it so close to mine? Unable to resist his curiosity, he decided to approach the site and investigate. As he listened to workers' conversations, he overheard a man's voice on a phone, presumably the contractor. "Yes, ma'am. I'll ensure everything is completed before the end of the month. We're ahead of schedule." Brian felt a twist in his chest. Who was this ma'am? Who was this woman funding a competing project? Determined to uncover the truth, Brian waited patiently, then saw the contractor leave the site and get into a luxurious black SUV. Brian didn't hesitate, he quietly followed the car to an upscale neighborhood. The car stopped in front of a large yellow house, and Brian could hardly believe his eyes when he saw Lisa step out, cheerfully chatting with the contractor. His heart pounded painfully, feeling as if everything was falling apart. She had been hiding something terrible from him. Filled with anger and heartbreak, Brian returned home, his mind swirling with questions. Why was Lisa involved in this project? Could it be that she was secretly working against me? That night, Brian lay beside Lisa, his feelings torn between anger and confusion. Lisa was fast asleep, her breathing steady and peaceful as though nothing had happened. Brian stared at the ceiling, his mind tangled with countless questions. Should he confront her immediately, or should he wait to uncover more before drawing any conclusions? In the end, Brian decided to investigate further before facing her. He hired a private investigator to look into Lisa's financial dealings and other pertinent details. The results he received left him both shocked and devastated. The investigator provided him with irrefutable evidence: the entire new shopping center was Lisa's property. She had secretly built it right beside Brian's project, not only to compete but seemingly influencing his loan application as well. Additionally, the investigator discovered that Lisa had purchased a separate villa, something Brian had never known about. Bank statements also revealed older transactions showing that Lisa had once used contraceptives and had even undergone an abortion in the early years of their marriage, something Brian had been completely unaware of. Deeply hurt, Brian struggled to remain calm, hoping to hear everything from Lisa's own mouth. That evening, after dinner, he sat across from her in the living room. When Lisa's phone rang, displaying the contractor's name, Brian could no longer remain silent. He spoke, his voice low but firm. "Lisa, I need to ask you something." Lisa looked up at him, her face calm as though nothing was amiss. "What is it, love?" Brian took a deep breath, feeling his heart tighten, but he continued. "The new shopping center, you're involved in it, aren't you?" For a moment, he saw a flicker of unease in Lisa's eyes. But she quickly regained her composure and smiled. "Oh, that's just business. Some clients from the bank wanted to invest in it." Brian looked straight at her, feeling his heart shatter as he sensed the lie. He asked again, his voice heavy. "Are you sure that's all, Lisa? Because I've looked into it, and everything points back to you." The room froze in silence. Lisa remained quiet for a long moment before finally sighing and looking away from him. She spoke in a low voice. "Brian, I did all of this for us. I thought if I could build something bigger, it would save our family." Brian couldn't hold back his anger, his voice breaking. "By betraying me? By building a competing shopping center right next to mine?" Lisa broke into tears, her voice choked. "I never meant for things to go this far. I just wanted independence, to be my own person, but I couldn't stop." Brian looked at her, his eyes filled with pain and disappointment. "We're a family, Lisa. We built everything together. How could you betray me like this, after everything I've done for you?" Brian stood up, his eyes filled with cold disappointment. He walked out of the living room, leaving Lisa with tears streaming down her face. In the days that followed, a cold, distant silence settled between them. Brian no longer looked at Lisa the same way. Whenever they met, all he felt was betrayal and pain. In the end, Brian made a decision from which there was no return. He prepared the divorce papers and handed them to Lisa, his gaze empty. Lisa pleaded for forgiveness, but Brian couldn't forgive what she had done. His heart had been deeply wounded, and he knew their love was no longer what it once was. After the divorce, Lisa's life fell into a pit of loneliness and regret. Patrick and Patricia, their children, couldn't accept the separation and couldn't take sides. They decided to move out, renting an apartment to avoid the tense and sorrowful life of their parents. Lisa tried to continue living, but everything now felt hollow. The shopping center she had poured her heart into was finally completed, but it felt like a monument to her betrayal. Despite her wealth and power, Lisa couldn't find happiness. She often sat alone in her large villa, staring out at the darkening sky, feeling the cold emptiness of the spacious house. Every night, lying in bed, she remembered Brian's laughter, the sound of her children's footsteps, and the sweet memories they once shared. She realized that love, loyalty, and trust were the true values in life, the things she had unwittingly lost. As for Brian, he began his life anew. Though he lost the dream shopping center and the wife he once cherished, he found peace in a simpler life. Brian no longer chased dreams of grand buildings or power. Instead, he embraced tranquility in the small, meaningful moments. He learned to accept and forgive himself, understanding that sometimes failure is a part of life. Lisa finally understood that all the money in the world couldn't fill the emptiness left by a heart that had betrayed those it loved. She learned a costly lesson: loyalty and true love cannot be replaced by career ambitions or power. The story closes with Lisa, sitting alone in her empty house, feeling the weight of her loneliness. Meanwhile, Brian, though he no longer had what he once desired, found himself again and lived an honest, simple, and peaceful life.